stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayatin. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayatin. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the sins. Oh Lord, have mercy on us. Have mercy on us all.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome to a brand new episode of 26 Ways to Be a Good Muslim Parent. In this episode, inshallah, we're going to be talking about something which is a continuation of what we have built up or what we have learned over the last few episodes. And it is the discussion on the topic of encouragement and reward. And bearing in mind with what we said in the last episode about putting Islam first, when it comes to encouragement and reward to do that which is good, encouragement and reward to please Allah, encouragement and reward for doing something in Islam, not for necessarily doing something in the dunya. Children, very naturally, want to please their parents. They really do. Children want to please their parents. Children want to make their parents happy. Children love to see recognition and encouragement from their parents. They love to see their parents happy with them. They love to see recognition. They love to see praise. They love to see their parents wanting them to do what is good. But the problem is that we as parents often make it very difficult for our children to do something that is good. And that is because we encourage them and reward them for doing the wrong, or we don't give them any encouragement when they do the right. Even if that particular right thing may well involve something which is disliked or something which is distasteful to us. For example, telling the truth when we really wanted them to lie. We really had it in our soul because of the whispering of the shaitan that we really wanted them to lie, but they told the truth. We should be willing to reward our children for telling the truth, even if it's against our own selves. We should be willing to reward our children for good, even if we weren't planning on them doing that good. And this concept of encouraging them and rewarding them is a part of the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Ma'idah in the second ayah. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate upon al-birr. And al-birr in this ayah is everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Cooperate upon al-birr. And cooperate upon at-taqwa. And at-taqwa is to be conscious of Allah, to do the right thing, to do the good deeds, and to avoid doing the bad. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا. And don't cooperate. عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Al-ithm is sin, and al-udwan is transgression and crossing the boundaries. Don't cooperate with each other in that which is displeasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. So how do we apply this ayah as a parent? We need to cooperate with our children in order to encourage them to do good, al-birr, all kinds of good, and to encourage them to do taqwa, which in this case means to do everything that Allah has commanded them to do, and to avoid everything that Allah Azza wa Jal has forbidden them from. So our encouragement and our reward, our words of praise and our happiness should be shown to them when they do something that is from al-birr and from at-taqwa, from righteousness and from God consciousness. When they do a good deed or when they avoid a sin, that is when they should see from us encouragement and praise and a desire for them to do more. They should equate us being happy with when they make Allah Azza wa Jal happy. That when I make Allah happy, my parents are happy. And when I make Allah angry, my parents are angry. And I feel this is a fundamental key to effective parenting. And let's not forget the second part of the ayah. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Don't cooperate with one another in sin and in transgression. Don't cooperate with one another in sin and in transgression. Because sometimes this is what parents do for their kids. They either help their kids to do the haram or encourage them to do the haram. And I want to draw your attention to the word ta'awun, or the verb ta'awanu in the ayah. And this means any kind of cooperation. This may be cooperation by encouragement, cooperation by support, playing a supporting role, cooperation by sharing in that deed. So the cooperation we have with our children may be cooperation in allowing them to do the good, cooperation in encouraging them to do the good, cooperation in facilitating them to do the good, or cooperation in doing the good with them, sharing the good together, going out together and doing the good together. And likewise, from the negative side, we may cooperate with them in allowing them to do evil, or we may cooperate with them in encouraging them to do evil. We may cooperate with them in facilitating them to do evil, and we may cooperate with them by sharing in the evil. All of these things must be avoided. This ayah is very, very comprehensive, and we can look at it in many different ways. But let's look at those four sort of categories we mentioned. The first one we talked about, allowing. So your children up to a certain age, and indeed we hope beyond that age, but at least up to a certain age, will consider your permission to be critical to whatever they do. They'll ask your permission for many things. Some of the things they'll ask your permission in will be from al-birr and al-taqwa. And some of the things that they ask your permission in will be from al-ithm wal-udwan, from sin and transgression. So what we want to do is to make it such that you give permission to do that which is good, even if it goes against what your prior ideas were. We all have prior ideas for our children, who they're going to marry, what job they're going to have, what future they're going to have, how much money they're going to make. And if the child asks permission for something that is going to go against that, but it is from al-birri wa taqwa, from good righteousness and from fear of Allah, then we have to allow our children to do that thing. And if they ask us to do al-ithm wal-udwan, we can't allow it, even if it is beloved to us, even if it's going to bring something good for us, even if it's going to bring at least something in the dunya that is good for us, or something of wealth, or something of quote-unquote success. None of this matters if it is from al-ithm wal-udwan, if it is from sin and transgression. So that's the issue of allowing. Now let's look at the issue of encouraging. Children love encouragement. They love to be given motivation. And you can encourage them through words, through gifts, through prizes, through showing your appreciation, through showing your happiness. All of these are ways to encourage your children. But you could encourage your children to do the halal, or you could encourage them to do the haram. You could encourage them to do al-birr, or you could encourage them to do al-ithm, righteousness or sin. You could encourage them to do taqwa, to obey Allah and to avoid disobeying Allah. Or you could encourage them to do al-udwan, to transgress against people and to go over the limits of Allah Azza wa Jal. You must make our encouragement for our children in that which is good and that which is beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal. The next thing is facilitating, and that means being a supporting worker, being someone who facilitates, who makes it happen between your child's, let's say your child needs you to fulfill something for them. They need you to drive them somewhere, or they need you to pay for something, and they ask you for something which is from al-birr and al-taqwa. Can I go and do this? Will you drive me to the masjid? Will you walk with me to my Quran class? Will you pay for me to go to this Islamic school? This is from al-birri wa taqwa. And as much as we can facilitate it, we should facilitate it. Make it easy for them. Of course, you don't always have the money, you don't always have the ability or the time, but as much as we can, we should be facilitating for our children those things which are good. And after facilitation comes Or first of all, if we look at facilitating things for them that are evil, will you drive me to this nightclub? Will you buy me alcohol? Will you buy me cigarettes? Will you buy me a TV and allow me to watch the haram? This is from al-ithm wal-udwan, facilitating bad things. And then finally, the issue of sharing in that action with them. So you as a parent spending time with your kids and doing something which is from al-bir. Let's both go and feed an orphan. Let's both go and help someone who is weak. Let's both go out and share in an action that's good. You can help me, for example, the parent might have some knowledge to share, and the child might have knowledge of how to use the computer, so the child helps the parent to share the knowledge with the world over the internet. This is sharing in doing good together, sharing the rewards. And likewise, not sharing the evil and not sharing the negative by making, for example, let's both go to the cinema together, let's both drink alcohol together, let's both do such and such. This is sharing in sin and transgression. So we need to encourage and facilitate and praise our children when they do good, and discourage and criticize and discipline our children when they do bad. And good and bad are defined by Islam and not by our personal feelings and culture. That's all we have time for in this segment, but we'll be back after the break for some practical examples, insha'Allah ta'ala. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Stay away from the major sins. Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayatins.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're talking about encouragement and praise. We talked about the ayah وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. We talked about different aspects that ayah can take, and there are many aspects, but just a few. For example, we talked about allowing good or bad for your children, encouraging and praising good or bad for your children. We talked about facilitating good or bad for your children by driving them, by paying for them, by linking them up with people to do either good or bad, and sharing in deeds with your children, good or bad. And we said that if we want to be good Muslim parents, so we need to make our permission and our encouragement and our facilitation and our sharing in deeds with our kids in that which is al-bir and al-taqwa. And al-bir is righteousness, and al-taqwa is to obey Allah and to avoid everything that would be considered as disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We said that this has both a, if you like, a positive and a negative aspect, the positive being in that which is good and the negative being in that which is considered sin and transgression, not allowing our children to do it, not praising them and encouraging them when they do it, not facilitating them to do the haram, and certainly not sharing in the haram with them. The practical implementation of this can be extremely challenging because of a number of reasons, not least of which that our own souls are often inclined towards that which is not good for us and not good for our children. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. The soul is constantly inclined towards evil, frequently inclined towards evil. And so our own souls sometimes want to do something haram. We have to realize, if you do something haram for yourself, that's one thing and it's bad enough. But if you do something haram and then bring your children into it and involve your children in it, then this is even worse. And in the worst scenario, you may well reach a point where you are facilitating evil for many, many people. You pick up your child's friends, and you take them to a place of haram, and you encouraging them to do so. You give them the money to go there, and maybe even you go yourself. And then people learn from you, and they teach their children to do the same, and their children to do the same, and their children to do the same, and indeed their children to do the same, and their friends and their relatives, and so on and so forth, until it reaches a point where you are the cause of a huge amount of evil in the world because of this sharing and facilitating, encouraging your children to do the haram. Likewise, you can achieve the exact opposite with good. You are a people who love your kids to do good, and you want them to do good, so they need to do some charity work or some teaching, some Islamic classes or something like that, and you facilitate that for them. You help their friends to go, you pay for them, you give them the financial support, you give them encouragement and praise when they do so. And so you end up being a cause for a great deal of good, and they teach this to their children and their children's children and their children's children, and so on, until you become a force for a huge amount of good in the world. So it's very important that encouragement and praise and cooperation is done upon that which is good. And children need to feel loved and to feel praised by their parents. They need that. Psychologically, they need it. Spiritually or emotionally, they need to feel that their parents are happy with them. And I've met a number of young children and young people who complain to me that I love to pray, but every time I pray, my mom and dad get angry with me. I love to fast, but my mom keeps telling me not to fast. And subhanAllah, sometimes that misplaced love is because of a desire from the parent to make things easy for the child. But it doesn't make things easy for the child. Sometimes it does what is not good for the child, and indeed we've talked about that in some detail. So in terms of examples, I have a lot of people come and say, my parents don't help me to do what is good. I want to do what is good. I want to wear hijab. Girl comes, I want to wear hijab. But my mom and dad tell me I can't. And this is very common in the UK. You know, in the UK there's a perception that Muslim women are forced to wear the hijab. But my perception among young women is that young women often are forced not to wear the hijab. And they only wear it with considerable difficulty and considerable challenges. And that's just wrong. That's wrong in so many ways for the parents to be discouraging their kids like this. But how can we encourage them and how can we praise them? What can we do? Particularly before they reach the age of puberty, we should have some sort of sliding scale. And that means that when they're very young, they don't know anything about the reward of Allah. They don't really know anything about Jannah. All they know is when they do something Islamically good, they get a lollipop or a candy, sweet, or they get chocolate, or they get something they like, or a toy, or a star, or a sticker. It can be as simple as that. You don't have to ruin your child's teeth by giving them candy. You can give them stickers, or just a pat on the head, a smile, a hug, well done, praising them and saying good about them when they're very, very, very young. When they're very young, they need 100% of this, and they don't really have any knowledge. Let's say they have 0% knowledge about the reward of Allah and what they're going to get from Allah. By the time they reach the age of puberty, you really want it to be the exact other way around. 100% they are working on receiving reward from Allah and getting reward from Allah, becoming nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they recognize that the reward of Allah is khayrun wa abqa, is better and more lasting. And they know that the baqiyat as-salihat, those good deeds that remain, are better in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal and more rewarding. They recognize all of this, and they don't really crave for a great deal of recognition. لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. We don't want from you reward nor thanks. So they're kind of at a stage where they're working purely for the sake of Allah, and they're not reliant upon their parents' recognition, although you continue to facilitate for them that which is good. That's when they reach puberty. And what I see it as is a sliding scale in between. So you continue to give your children, you continue to shower gifts upon them, praise upon them, not when they do well in something that is related to the dunya, although you can do so, but when they do something which is good related to the deen. And even the dunya, try to make it such that they link the good in the dunya with Islam. So they feel like this, that when I do well at school, I do well at school so that I can please my mom and dad, and that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why my mom and dad give me. Some parents have said to me in the past, just recently I was speaking with a group of parents, a question came, but will our children not just associate this with when I get candies I do it, when I don't get candies I don't do it? And I said it's all down to how you present the reward. If you present the reward as, this is because you made Allah happy, this is because you made Allah happy, then inshallah your children will learn that that reward is all about pleasing Allah. But if you make it such that they don't know why they are getting the reward, or they feel the reward is whether you are happy, whether it's halal or haram, as long as you're happy, they'll get the reward. They will never associate this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They'll never associate this with what is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So what you want to do with regard to the reward is make sure, first of all, you only give that reward and encouragement for something which is Islamically allowed, even if it's in the dunya, like getting good grades, but only in that which is Islamically halal, and they never get rewarded for the haram. The second thing is you want to make sure that you're consistent in giving that reward out, and not that you give it out when it suits you and you don't give it out when it doesn't. The third thing is you vary the reward. It's not always one thing. If you give your kids too much chocolate, it's going to ruin their teeth. But at the end of the day, you give them a variety of rewards, a variety of different things. And these are things you may have given your children anyway. For example, they associate their presence on Eid with being good kids. You were going to buy them anyway. You were going to buy them a bicycle in any case, but you bought one for them because you linked it to the reward. So that's important. Fourthly, you mention that this reward is because they have made Allah happy by doing something which is good. And this will really help your children to develop that feeling of pleasing Allah Azza wa Jal. And then as they get older, you start to clarify with them and make it clear to them that the reward of Allah is much better. And that even though I'm giving you this money, I'm giving you this sweet, I'm giving you this toy, I'm only giving it to you as a small gesture of how happy I am with you. But Allah is going to give you much, much more, inshallah. And they recognize that, and they start to actually want what is with Allah more than they want what is with you. And if you give them or you don't give them, then of course they are more attached to what is with Allah. And then finally, I think it's important that the reward is appropriate to the action. If you reward them with huge things every single time, it will be very difficult for them to manage that throughout. I mean, for example, what some people do is they give their child very, very small amounts of money when they do something really good. And it builds up. So let's say, for example, you would give your child pocket money. You would give them, let's just say, $20 of pocket money every month. Instead of giving them that $20, break it up into cents, into smaller parts, and give them 10 cents every time they do something good. In the end, it will add up to the same $20 that you were going to give them before. However, if you keep giving them $5 every time they do something good, eventually, at the end of the month, either they'll make you bankrupt, or either, the child will expect large things. So sometimes even small things, sometimes even stickers. They do it at school. They give children little stickers with a star that says, well done, or a little card that says, well done. A small card or a letter just says, well done, or something like this. Or they get to go out somewhere with you that they wouldn't normally be able to go, or stay up half an hour late after bedtime. These are all options that you can do. Vary the rewards and make them appropriate for what the child does. But it's really important that you encourage them, you reward them, you help them, you facilitate them, you support them, and you share in doing good with them. All of it in that which is al-birr wa taqwa. And you avoid doing any of that in that which is al-ithm wal-udwan, sin and transgression. And that's all we have time for in this episode. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayateens. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayateens. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. Have mercy on our souls. Stay away from the major sins. Ignore the whispers of the shayateens. Oh Lord, oh